So I wanted to talk a little bit about our corn this year. This year's a little bit different for our garden. We actually did not grow our own corn this year. We usually grow a small patch of corn, and it's almost too much for us most of the time, or just enough for us to um, freeze or can or eat or whatever. Sometimes we'll sell it in our farm stand if we have enough. The last couple of years, our corn crop has not been fabulous. So, to be honest with you, I wasn't really excited about growing corn. So, you can see behind me here, this is our field. Um, and it's too big for us to do a whole lot with. We don't have enough animals on our homestead yet to really graze or make that area worth much. And so we lease it out to a farmer. And that farmer this year decided to plant seed corn. And so basically, what that means is we have these rows here. You can see there's these tall rows that have um, their tassels on them. And then in between those rows, there's no tassels on those corn. And so what they do, what they call corn topping. So they go through those rows and they pull off the tops of the corn, they pull off the tassel, and then the tassel from the boll row pollinates the rest of the corn. And that cross pollinates and creates a specific breed or certain characteristics in the corn. Typically, it's like a sweet corn or something like that that they want to enhance. And so it's kind of a hybrid, I guess you would say. And so because they were planting the corn, they asked us, because it's on our land and because our garden's really close by, they asked us not to grow corn this year so that they wouldn't have the chance of accidental cross-pollination, which we were just fine with. And then they offered to let us know when they were going to plant some sweet corn elsewhere in the area, and they would let us know when that happened and that when that corn was ready and we could pick from that. And so that's what we did. To go over to this fun little patch of corn just down the road from us and pick what we needed for our own family. And we did share a little bit with some family and friends just because the kids loved picking the corn. But that's kind of why we didn't grow our own corn this year. So typically we do grow our own corn. Typically we have a small patch, but this year we were kind of lucky and we were able to get corn from somewhere else and not have to do that extra work.
Once you get the corn home, the real work begins. If you've ever eaten corn or grown corn, you know that it doesn't really last very long before it starts getting kind of gummy and chewy. And the best time to can or freeze or preserve your corn is within the first day of actually picking the corn. After that, it starts getting kind of old and it's not quite as tasty. To have the most successful experience, we had the kids shuck all the corn and put it into a cooler for us. Once that was done, we brought it in and we were able to set up so that we could start taking the corn off the cobs. Now, some people like to preserve their corn on the cobs and put it in the freezer. We actually just prefer to make our own sweet corn that we can freeze or freeze dry for future use. So I personally like to avoid as much of a mess as I can, especially with corn because it's very sticky. So I'll put down a plastic, inexpensive tablecloth, and then I will get a bowl and place the corn inside the bowl and use a sharp knife to pull the kernels off of the cob. Typically, we do a lot of ears of corn so that we can have enough freezer or freeze-dried corn to last us until the next season, if not longer. Our sweet corn recipe is one that we got from a sweet friend probably 6 or 7 years ago. It's by far our favorite, and I love how simple it is. You probably already have all the ingredients in your pantry. You'll need butter, water, sugar, and just a little bit of salt. You'll bring all of these things up to a low boil on your stovetop in a stock pot big enough for about 14 cups of corn. Once you have your mixture up to a simmer, you're going to add your corn. You'll use about 13 to 14 cups of corn, and you'll stand there at the stovetop mixing that corn up. You'll kind of coat it in this yummy buttery mixture and cook it for about 5 minutes on kind of a low to medium heat. This will cook the corn just enough that that mix will be incorporated and you'll get all the flavors, but not overcooking it to make it gummy later. Once it's cooked that 5 minutes, you'll put it on a baking sheet with a piece of parchment paper over the top. This will help keep your sheet from getting too gross, as well as help the corn be able to be removed from that baking sheet when you're ready to freeze it. I like to spread it out pretty evenly, just so everything cools down. And then you're going to leave it out on the countertop for a couple of hours until it cools down. Once it's cooled down, you can put it in bags and place it in your freezer. But today, we're going to do a little something different, and we're going to set up our freeze dryer so that it is all ready to put this delicious sweet corn into and freeze dry overnight, or maybe just a little bit longer than that. Now it's time to make tonight's meal. And yeah, we're having corn, but not in the traditional way. Tonight we're doing a one-pot skillet meal. It's called a sausage and zucchini skillet. Of course, we're adding corn to that as well, but you could add any other veggies that your family might enjoy. We have some kielbasa sausage that we've just cut up and are sauteing in the pan just to heat it up and brown it a little bit. Our zucchini is fresh from the garden today, so it's ripe and delicious. We also have some fresh cilantro from our garden. And then our corn isn't actually the fresh corn that we picked today. It's from last year's crop that's been in our freezer. But it's still good, so we're going to go ahead and plop it in this skillet meal. I like to brown up the kielbasa. It gives it a little bit of a crunch, and it really releases the juices and the flavor. Once they are nice and brown, I'll pull these kielbasa out of the skillet and add the zucchinis to saute. Now sometimes if I'm feeling like a lot of flavor, I'll add onion and garlic to the pot before I put the zucchini in, just to add a little bit more aroma. But today, we're not going to do onion and garlic. We're just going to focus on the kielbasa, the zucchini, the corn, and then add cilantro on top. Once that zucchini is nice and cooked, I'll add the corn in for just a minute or two to heat it up and give it some of that flavor. And then we can add that kielbasa right back into the pot. Now we have a delicious meal with fresh veggies that came right from the garden for this weeknight meal. The corn is finally done in the freeze dryer, so let me show you what it looks like. It's nice and crispy and kind of crunchy. You can see that it just kind of flakes, which is one of the best parts about freeze drying. We just have to check every single tray and make sure there's no wet spots. If there's wet spots, then we got to run it for another couple hours, or even just cold spots. So make sure you warm your trays before you check your food to make sure that everything is nice and dry. This is looking really, really great. I'm super excited to be able to put this corn on our shelf for long-term storage. And then we will just literally pop it out of the pantry, throw a handful in a casserole, in a skillet, as topping on a salad. Freeze-drying corn is really the way to go. This tray of freeze-dried corn is actually not sweet corn, it's just plain corn, but the rest are sweet corn. Thanks for watching. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time.